Well, everyone, welcome. Happy Star Wars Day.
And happy Star Wars Day to you.
Welcome to our virtual Star Wars panel discussion. I'm going to be your moderator. My name is Jigisha Patel. And before we begin, I'd like to introduce our Star Wars enthusiast panel. First is Rachel. She is the Director of Youth Services. Then Nick, he is the Director of our Tech and Online Services. Ryan is reference and co-host of the KPL Podcast. And our very special guest is Suzanne Scott. She is an associate professor of media studies at the Department of Radio, Television, Film at the University of Texas at Austin. She is the author of Fake Geek Girls, Fandom, Gender, and the Convergence Culture Industry, and the co-editor of the Rutledge Companion to the Media Fandom. She has written extensively on Star Wars and currently teaches a transmedia storytelling course focused on the franchise. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. I'm so excited that you're here. So our first question is going to be an easy one, hopefully. So Dr. Scott, let's start with you. Who is your favorite Star Wars character?
Oof. This is like a Sophie's Choice question right out of the gate. Look, I love Lando Calrissian. I'm going to go with Lando Calrissian. Has always been, since I originally watched the original trilogy, my favorite character, and continues to be. I love the comics that circle around him. I will say that the character that I feel like I'm a little sad that we're not going to probably see a ton more of anytime soon is Envis Nest from Solo, is my other answer to that question.
Okay, Ryan, your turn.
A very tough question, but I feel I've said on the podcast a few times that it goes to Hera Syndulla. So I've got to stand by Hera Syndulla. She just kicks so much butt as the captain of the Ghost, and she is just one of my all-time favorites.
And Nick, how about you? Who's your favorite?
I'm a little torn, but I usually default to Grand Admiral Thrawn. Just his cunning and his brilliance and his ruthlessness, in my opinion, with the Empire has always been my favorite, even in the old expanded universe before they brought him into the current universe.
Rachel.
Yes, so this was a really hard one because it really does vary on the days where I'll be like, oh, I love this character the most, but I had to go for like my deep down and my heart answer, it'd probably be Leia, like in just all iterations. I just think she's wonderful, and I really miss Carrie Fisher. She just brought a lot to the character, as well as, her stories and legends, continuity. Like usually a lot of my favorite stories involve Leia, so I love her. I love everyone in Star Wars, except like one character, but you know.
Wait, who do you hate?
Oh, I do not. Yeah, I don't care for that Kylo Ren.
I had an inappropriate shirt for this podcast on earlier today in celebration of May the 4th day that had a swear on it, so I took it off. But it was involving Kylo Ren, so you're in good company.
Good. When I saw him in The Last Jedi without the shirt and his pants up, I was like, oh, this is funny. And then people were like, no, this is cute. And I'm like, no, it's funny. But yes.
So Adam, you are welcome to answer also if you'd like. And if you have a question for the other panelists, you're welcome to just type out the question in the chat if you want.
Well, I'd say my favorite character is Ezra Bridger. I can relate with him a lot, starting off as kind of someone who has good intentions, but at times can be pretty annoying, and then grows into, well, my favorite character of the Star Wars universe.
Good intentions, but pretty annoying is the arc of almost every hero in Star Wars, I feel like, ultimately. So
very true. All right, so this one is a pretty broad question too. So which storyline, and it could be pretty much any part of the canon, had the deepest impact for you? So this time, Ryan, I'll start with you.
Oh, so unprepared. Deepest impact. I don't know. I still remember being a little kid and watching Empire Strikes Back. Well, so tough. So I was old enough to see Return of the Jedi in the theaters. I can still remember going to that and getting like a special event booklet that I've got still that holds a cherished memory. But I also remember a very early memory of watching like Empire Strikes Back when it was like on like local television, and the moment where Han goes down and gets put into carbonite just terrified me as a child. So it's a scarring memory, but it probably had a lasting impact. I remember having nightmares that evening about being frozen in a block of carbonite and my Wookiee buddy not there to protect me. So either of those two, I think, work. It certainly grew to my favorite memories. And also one more, if I may just interject real quick, as we told Anthony Daniels on our podcast, I also remember going as C-3PO one year for Halloween, and my mask broke about after the second house because it was those terrible old rubber string on the back of your mask. Did not last.
I imagine that happened to a lot of boys or a lot of kids.
A lot of girls too, I bet.
Yes.
Yeah. We all had those terrible string masks back in the 80s. I can go next if people want. I was gonna say, Han and carbonite is that not pretty much everyone's answer? I don't know. I will pick another one though. And I'll pick one based on the fact that, I study fan cultures and I am a fan myself, and Star Wars was definitely one of my primary fandoms growing up. And I was not quite old enough to see the original trilogy in theaters when it came out. But certainly it was a big part of my adolescence and my high school years. And I really vividly remember, I think one of the moments that I think is really most important and most impactful for me is the sort of I think it's always I always come back to the cantina scene, right? Or I could also say maybe the very brief shot of all the bounty hunters like lined up in Empire, right? Like there are these moments in these movies where the richness and the depth of the world is so just like visible, but it's also so kind of mundane, right? It's so kind of like it's on the screen and then it's gone, and you get a sense of like the fact that this world is so much bigger and there are so populated with these kind of cultures that we don't really learn much about in the actual movies themselves. And as a fan, and as somebody who's also an avid reader of things like fan fiction, and I love a text where like there's some kind of like rich detail like that where we see a bunch of bounty hunters lined up. We don't hear anything really about their backstories or how they arrived at this point, and then fans kind of run with those narratives and create them themselves. So like I'm always a big fan of any moment that kind of is like rich with narrative possibility, but doesn't necessarily feel compelled to give us every single detail or narrative answer. So those are always the ones that are most impactful for me, at least.
Nick?
Yeah, I always end up defaulting to Empire most of the time. I love that end scene where it's just John Williams soundtrack and everything hanging up in the air waiting for the next movie. It always gives me goosebumps. But I think the storyline that had the biggest impact on me was actually probably the culmination of episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, because I'd grown up watching the original trilogy on VHS thousands and thousands of times. And then when the new trilogy came out, all the expanded universe that I had read up until that point and all of the rumors that I'm like, this is how they say Anakin's supposed to be injured and all that stuff. It finally culminating in that epic battle scene between Anakin and Obi-Wan. That was pretty epic.
All right, Rachel, your turn.
Okay, I'm going to share my age here a little bit. I remember, first, I guess, there's a few. For scarring, I do remember I was terrified of Darth Vader without the mask, and that's probably because I watched Return of the Jedi a lot, which is also the moment with the duel between Vader and Luke on the Death Star. I think that's just a very memorable scene. It really sets up a lot of like that, I guess, the struggle that Luke has with the dark and the light, and there's always the good in Vader, and it's a really good scene. And also Palpatine's back there chuckling evilly, and I love it when Palpatine chuckles. Um, and then I will say, as a fan, this is where I show my age, because I do remember going to the theater to see Revenge of the Sith, but regardless of how it all turned out, when The Force Awakens came out, I was so excited, and it was just so great to just be like, oh my gosh, this world is back. Like, there was just something really exciting about it. And ultimately, there were disappointments, but there was just something so great to kind of feel like, oh, it's coming back and it's new and there's all these characters, and I had a lot of hopes. And so, yeah, it had an impact on me. Positive or negative, we'll see.
And Adam, feel free. Do you want to answer the question too?
Well, I almost feel like, because I was thinking about it as everybody talked, and it kind of started thinking about Return of the Jedi being one that I watched a lot younger, and then just kind of the whole arc there of Luke, and then showing where he ended up as from the beginning movie, and then you also get, like I was gonna kind of say at the end there with him and Vader and them going on, and then you have that where you kind of going expecting to maybe some degree that it's going to be this huge lightsaber battle throughout, and then you actually have quiet moments where it's taken back, and like fighting isn't always the answer, and that Luke's trying to get through to Vader and end up spoilers does and then you cut to the actual battle that's happening on with to shut down in space or back on the moon of Endor. It just really enjoyed that. If also I kind of enjoyed it even more, I know I'll plug in something here that I've enjoyed, a YouTube channel called Cinema Therapy, and today they released an episode talking about Anakin Skywalker, and brought in the end there of Return of the Jedi also. So just kind of really enjoyed all of that.
So just out of curiosity, has anyone written any fan fiction? Would you mind telling us about it, Dr. Scott?
Oh wow, it's been a minute. I have not, kind of the irony of being a person who studies fan culture is you often don't have the amount of time you used to have to actually engage and participate in fan communities. So this was probably, this, not to get us on another franchise, but like I was very involved in sort of like Buffy and Harry Potter fandoms when those were in their sort of infancy in digital space. My Star Wars fandom, since it was kind of in that era of the re-releases and then the prequels, like I was not doing a lot of like digital participation in Star Wars. So this would be stuff that I probably wrote when I was like, between the ages of like 10 and, 17, like before I was really in digital fan culture. And so I'm sure it exists somewhere like in a musty box at my mom's house or something. I'm sure it was like written on paper, right? Or probably not even typed. I wrote, I'm sure I wrote some bad, not bad, but certainly like some sort of classic self-insert fan fiction where I was like Han Solo's lost daughter or something like that. That feels very on brand for me. I know I at least did that with Indiana Jones, so I'm assuming I just did that across the board with all of Harrison's 80s and 90s roles. And I definitely remember, I remember writing, there was sort of a movement that happened in the Star Wars fandom, or it was sort of a campaign to reveal that Boba Fett was a woman, that I remember sort of hearing about. And before, obviously, we get the whole prequels backstory on how Boba Fett became Boba Fett. And I remember thinking that was a really interesting idea. And so I'm sure that I also wrote some either like gender swap fan fiction or took one of the many people who were in helmets and wrote, backstories where they were sort of like women, in part because at that point, as much as I absolutely adore Leia, like I'm completely on board with you, Rachel, at that point there were fewer women to kind of like latch on to as a female consumer of Star Wars. So I'm sure I also wrote some of that too, but the details are foggy. I promise I'm not holding out on you. It's just been a really long time since I thought about it, but I know that I wrote some. It never saw the light of day though.
I can also, not so much fan fiction, but I have been a game master for my group of friends for nigh on over 20 years now, and I have run multiple campaigns and a couple of Star Wars. The one that lasted the longest was basically I cannibalized the TV show Rebels and put my friends through that. But I also did, as I'm not very original in my creations, I usually just steal bits and bots, and I used Dragon Age for the other longest lasting one. I just basically turned it into a science fiction instead of like a fantasy. Well, I mean, science fiction fantasy, but you get where I'm going with that. So Ish.
Very nice. Anyone else? All right, so next question, and feel free to jump in. You don't necessarily have to have me call on you. From the 9 Star Wars movies, what decision would you change? All right, go Rachel.
Padme drops Anakin like a hot potato. I mean, what was she thinking? I know, like, I'm like nothing. I'm like, how does this even work? Like, you're just like, Padme is just so like on top of stuff. She's like got the Senate. She's like a queen at 14, but like Anakin, really? I get it. You can explore it and it can make a lot of sense, but like, no. Also, like, they probably should have figured out Palpatine was a Sith Lord. Like, it's like, yeah. He doesn't seem like a friendly guy. He's kind of just an old chuckly evil man. Like, I guess we could blame Yoda for that one. No, not really. Yoda's fine.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have Leia if...
It's true.
So.
I would say that realistically, though, I would say it would be just like, I would probably just like realistically thinking about changes, it would just be more the sequel trilogy should have had a more cohesive storyline, as well as the prequels. And I mean, if you're going with the original, like, there's just the storylines, like there's parts where you're like, well, did we really need that, versus here's how the story goes. So I don't know, an editor.
My answer is also kind of new trilogy related, so I'll pile on. Why not? Listen, the hill that I will die on, my like Star Wars hot take hill that I want to die on, is that they did Finn really dirty in that trilogy. When you were talking about sort of how excited you got about The Force Awakens, I was the same way, and I think you can write that off as like, we're old and it felt like the original trilogy on one hand, but like on the other, I think what was incredible about The Force Awakens is I thought it did better character development than any prior Star Wars movie I had seen. So like in terms of like the foundations of characters,
Yes.
We have like in terms of Rey, in terms of Finn, and then like they just did nothing with Finn. They clearly from a narrative perspective did not know what to do with him. And like, here's the thing. I know a lot of people will say, I wish Finn was a Jedi. And I understand that rationale. And because I think that it automatically gives him a narrative trajectory, right? Like, we know what the Jedi narrative trajectory looks like. We know what that hero's journey looks like, with some twists and turns and differences to make it still unique and interesting. To me, what was so fascinating about that character was that you have someone who gets kind of like roped up into this kind of ideology and war, and then makes a conscious decision to leave that space. But it's also in some ways a kind of cowardly self-preservation decision, right? So he has all these beautiful qualities. That character has so many beautiful qualities that I think we all laud in like a Han Solo archetype, right? The sort of reluctant hero thing. And then they just sort of literally strand him at corners of the galaxy for the rest of the trilogy with nothing to do really. And so to me, you know, it would not have been like one particular decision, but you know, the moment that they sort of to me, the minute the Casino Planet decision was made, everything goes off the rails for me in the new trilogy. Not because the Casino Planet is like CGE or looks like the prequels, which it does, unfortunately, but because it takes two of what I thought were some of the most interesting potential characters and kind of doesn't give them like sends them on this basic like MacGuffin mission, right? That never really does anything. And just, it felt a little, it didn't feel like there was a plan, in the same way that we all complained back in the days when like Lost was going off the rails, and we're like, but we were told they had a plan for this narrative. Where is it going? And I vividly remember sitting in the theater during Last Jedi and be like, oh no, they don't know what to do with him. This is going to be unfortunate. And feeling just kind of deflated, because I was like, oh, I was so excited coming out of Force Awakens as to how they were gonna take these characters in interesting directions. Like, what does this character do now? Like, what role does this person play in the Resistance? And like, the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, oh, and it's just so sad because the actors were so excited to be like, even just thinking like John Boyega, I know he was super excited, and then it's just like at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I wish you had more to do.
This is also just me personally. Like, I vividly remember watching Attack the Block in a theater and leaning over to my husband halfway through the movie, and I was like, that dude is a movie star. Like, John Boyega has been a favorite actor of mine for a really long time too. And so when he got cast in Star Wars, I may have projected a lot of energy in that direction because I was really psyched when that casting announcement happened. And so I felt maybe doubly betrayed in certain ways, in ways that I know that they were not trying to personally hurt my feelings, but it did make me a little sad to see that they didn't think about what they could do with that type of turncoat character that they hadn't really had as much, at least in the movies up until that point.
Yeah, there was like, no empire, like bad guy switches to good guy kind of.
But this is also my Lando Calrissian thing, right? Like, I love a reformed, but sort of still selfish and cowardly dude in the Star Wars galaxy. That is my type, clearly.
Hondo Ohnaka is one of my favorite characters too. But I was gonna say, there's a lot to be said about like the new trilogy that you could say, but one thing I'd really like to change is I really always have enjoyed reading the Dark Jar Jar fan theory of him being a Sith Lord. I would love that to, change that and have that be a thing.
Yes. 100% agree. It would make, imagine that reveal. Like, oof, be so good.
Hey, what about you?
I think that just the Luke Skywalker story arc in the new trilogy is what bothered me the most. Having grown up in the old expanded universe, now Legends, every book, just how epic adventures that Luke has and his revival of the Jedi Academy and the new Jedi Order, and then just to see what they did with his character, kind of, cowardly hiding on an island because he couldn't get a small group of, Jedi to turn out quite right. That's my first one. My second one, of course, is that Han Solo shot first. End of story.
I was going to maybe say that too. I will say that as a teacher at the end of pandemic year, like, I really do feel that Luke Skywalker, green milk, just kind of like exhausted energy right now. So I found it so sort of sympathetic, but I hear what you're saying.
I think the storyline of all three, Leia, Luke, and Han, it was all just kind of sad and just disappointing. The direction.
Chewbacca's the only happy ending, which is ironic because in Legends, he was like the one who died.
Yeah, he shouldn't have been there.
It was a real monkey's paw situation, I guess, that Chewbacca, he also wished away his wife and his child, but, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I feel like they just kind of wanted to work all the characters in somehow, and then the only ending result is for them all to be dead now. So now we don't have to talk about it anymore.
Well, listen. I was going to say exactly. I was just about to say, like, Harrison got his wish. Basically, I assume that negotiation went, I'll do it, but just this one thing, and you have to promise to really kill me off this time.
Right. Imagine how much that cameo cost at the end of the last movie.
All right, Ryan.
So many people have taken my answers. So I'll take a shot at the new films as well. One character that I loved that I thought did not get the time of day was Captain Phasma. I think Gwendolyn Christie is a fantastic actress. She brought to life a very scary, interesting, cool, like Captain Stormtrooper idea. And we got next to nothing about her. I was so excited when the second film came out, and I'm like, she's gonna be like such a big part, and she just shows up to essentially, spoilers, die. unceremoniously, in my opinion. And we really don't know much about her. I mean, they did publish a book, and it's a good book, but I just wanted her on screen so much more. And if I could change one other thing, I think this is more of an overarching wish. Long before the sequel trilogy was even talked about, there was the Yuuzhan Vong War in Star Wars Legends, and I had so imagined a 3-movie arc of that, because to me that was the logical next move for these films. And then Disney came along, and we got what we got, and it still very good. But in my head, I would have gone Yuuzhan Vong.
You don't think that's going to happen? I feel like that's so inevitable. I think you're going to get it, is what I'm saying. I hope you get it. And I think you're going to get it in one of the 18 new television series they're producing. Surely it'll pop up.
Well,
I feel like they are taking a lot from Legends and just repurposing it into Kylo Ren against basically Jason Solo. There's just a lot of stuff they're just oh, we'll take this. In some cases, they just bring Thrawn in and get Timothy Zahn to write him.
And these new Thrawn trilogies, I mean, they keep alluding to these other species out in the unknown regions that are quite the threat to the Chiss and the Empire. So I'm interested. I think the new book just came out, and I'm eagerly waiting on hold for it.
Well, I hope so, but I've been burnt before.
Well, actually, that was one of my questions coming up, is what Star Wars IP would you love to see made into a show or a movie?
So years ago, before Disney bought Lucasfilm, there was some talk of a Jedi Academy live action series. And although no longer quite canon, I would love to see them do something with the Jedi Academy and, Luke Skywalker, Kyle Katarn, and all those. That'd be great.
Well, again, I'm just waiting for that fated Rebel sequel that's going to come one day, sometime soon. # where's Ezra Bridger? But I mean, I would be kind of curious to this is just a comic. Dr. Aphra, I feel like that would be a really interesting TV show. I think she's just cool, and I think that it could get into the whole the weird archaeology but crime part of the Star Wars universe pretty well. Also, I just want a show set in Bea Arthur's Cantina from the holiday special. And the other one, it's not really Star Wars, the characters, but I would love to see celebrities read Wikipedia articles out loud. Because sometimes you're just wow, this is a lot of information and lots of things that you're just wow, okay. But that's the beauty of Star Wars. You could have a 50,000 word article about Max Rebo.
I think it would be interesting to see a live action version of the original Knights of the Old Republic video game. I think that would make a really epic TV show, and one that I'd like to see. But I will also second what Rachel said, because that was definitely going to be my answer. I would love to see a Doc Aphra show. I think she brings so much, and she gets little attention. And then to every point that Rachel made, she's also a very positive LGBTQIA character, and that's something that I wish Star Wars would flesh out better and give more time to.
I had to refresh my memory on mine, because I was someone's going to take Knights of the Old Republic, so I need to have a backup answer, and sure enough, I did. My answer would probably be, there was a comic book series that I was very into in the early aughts called Star Wars Legacy, as part of the Dark Horse series that I quite liked. It was sort of Cade Skywalker centered. I really remember, and it's been a minute since I've read it, but I just remember really liking, I think part of it's that it's set sort of so far outside of the sort of, in the same way Knights of the Old Republic is kind of outside of contemporary cinematic canon in a big way. This is sort of set so kind of far down the road that it felt like it had a little bit more room to play around, and I thought that freedom was really fun. So that would probably be my answer.
I'd probably go with the Dark Forces video game. I played that a lot when it came out. That'd be another childhood memory of mine that's very entangled with Star Wars, is playing that game through multiple times.
All right, so Disney has a lot of new shows that are coming up. So what are you most looking forward to seeing?
Just give me more Mandalorian. That's all I want in my life. That's a glib answer, but it's also the truth. I genuinely really love The Mandalorian, and I'm very excited. I mean, again, we're not getting The Mandalorian as we have known it, but I'm interested to see what kind of directions they go in with those sort of branching narratives where we have characters from that show spinning off into different series. I'm excited to see where they take that.
Yeah, I agree. More Mandalorian. And of course, I'm really excited about the Ahsoka show and the Obi-Wan show. That's the one I really want to see. I'm so excited for Ewan McGregor to come back as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I really hope they kind of, have an idea of where they might take it. But I'm kind of hoping they pull from some of the journals of Obi-Wan Kenobi that they had Luke Skywalker find in some of the comic book series. They've had some pretty good stories with that. And so I think they have a lot of good stuff to work with.
I had to look up a list because I was just like, oh, wow, there's a lot more shows than I realized coming up. But of course, that's Disney. But Kenobi is another one I'm excited about. I want to know why he aged so much in 19 years. I know realistically there's a reason why, but I just want it to be Anakin's drama just aged him that much.
Or just sun damage from Tatooine, right?
I mean, yeah,
one of the two.
He lived on Coruscant. He was not he was. I think someone was the difference between him and Bail Organa is Bail was just sitting on Alderaan drinking kale smoothies while, Kenobi's eating womp rats and Tatooine. You're yeah.
We could mix our sci-fi faves and just say he's also a Time Lord.
I mean, I'm sure the ghost of Alec Guinness would love that. I didn't realize, and I saw it, there's a Lando show coming, so hashtag Lando did nothing wrong. And I'm very excited to see that, because I think that was one of the few things where Rise of Skywalker, I was just yes, Lando's back. He's an old man, but hey, I'll take what I can get. So yeah, Lando is probably the one I'm excited about.
They need to do the Lando show like an Ocean's 11 type thing with the Timothy Zahn book Scoundrels had that vibe to it.
And I would love it if it was I don't know if it is Donald Glover or not who's reprising from Solo, but if he is, great. But also seeing characters from the comics like Sana Starros, I would like that a lot too. I think that would be cool.
All right, Ryan or Adam?
I'm probably most excited about the Ahsoka Tano show, but so much coming down the line sounds exciting, so I can't wait. But yeah, it's probably that.
I do look forward to the Cassian Andor series. I hope there could be a lot of potential there. I hope K2SO is in it. I really like. I love everything Alan Tudyk has done, so I look forward to hoping that he's in that, and yeah, I would hope that there's some sort of Rebels sequel too. That would be my hope and biggest thing to look forward to. That would be the only main thing to look forward to in Ahsoka is any crossover to Rebels.
So now with Ahsoka, are they starting her as the teenager? Because she was Anakin's Padawan. So are they starting that early or is it later? Am I mixing up characters or do I have it wrong?
Well, I imagine it'll all be after The Mandalorian.
I think it's the Rosario Dawson.
Thank you. I couldn't remember Rosario Dawson's name. Yeah, so I imagine it'll be all after that. I'm very interested to see, because I really want to see a live action Sabine Wren, and where Rebels left off, they were heading off to find Ezra. So I hope that's the big overarch of that.
All right. So if you had your own ship, what would be your favorite, or what vehicle would you love to have from Star Wars? I think I'd want the Death Star, but.
Would you do good things with the Death Star, Chiquisha?
I just want to fly around in it, I guess. I'm not going to blow up planets.
I would have to just pick the Millennium Falcon. That's always my favorite, hands down. Han Solo's fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy, all the modifications that he's done, and pretty much anything Millennium Falcon I love to collect if I can. I've had dozens of models and the big Lego sets, and when I was a kid, I had dreams of going out in my backyard and building tree forts that had like Millennium Falcon themes to it, like the hallways and the cockpit and all that good stuff.
For vehicles, like thinking just of myself, like realistically, I'd like Count Dooku's little sky scooter. That seems pretty sweet. It's flying around. I mean, it's basically a Segway, or not a Segway, but one of those little carts that you go around, but it can fly.
This is hard. I quite like the speeder. This is going to be very specific. I quite like the Marshall speeder in season 2 of Mandalorian, the Timothy Oliphant's driving. I think that's a pretty cool little speeder, and I just like a speeder in general. But I guess if I was gonna pick my like dark side answer, I'd probably say like, everyone wants to ride an AT-AT, right? I mean, at some point or another.
Yes, I do. I think my cousin had the toy early on, and I was so jealous. I wanted the toy so badly.
Jigisha's like, the Empire's evil, but like their vehicles are rocking, so
they're pretty cool. I also, for my wedding cake, we restaged the Battle of Hoth on my wedding cake with a giant one, like my giant toy one that I have in my office. And so, yeah, it holds a special place in my heart as well for that.
I'm so torn. I feel like the easy answer is just to go with the Ghost, as Nick has definitely taken the Millennium Falcon, and as I've enjoyed Rebels quite a bit, I think I would just naturally go with the Ghost regardless. Plus, you get like a little baby shuttlecraft that goes along with it. So if I ever wrecked the Ghost, I could fly away in my escape pod.
Well, they're from the same shipyard, so there you go.
Yeah.
I was trying to look up mine. I can't remember the name of it. The ship from Dark Forces. But if I have to say one that has a name, I'll go with the Ebon Hawk from Knights of the Old Republic. So I also really enjoyed that one.
All right. So does anyone have a favorite Star Wars book that they'd like to talk about?
I feel like I'm going to be outdone here, so I'm going to go first and get it out of the way. And then y'all can talk. I will say that like I really love, this is like back in the day, like this is a 90s series, but I really like the Tales of series. Like I like any Tales of Cantina, Tales of Bounty Hunters, those kinds of anthology sort of, we get short stories from a bunch, giving us background on a bunch of different characters. I will just plug that I just recently read they're doing a whole series of like Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view. And I really love kind of looking at the whole fictional universe from odd perspectives. So Tracy Dion's got a story in there called Virgins that's like literally from the perspective of the cave on Dagobah, like some really wiggly, interesting kind of takes on things that I really enjoy. But I also I have it sitting here as a prop. I just literally started this book by Rebecca Roanhorse, Resistance Reborn, and I'm enjoying it so far. And so, yeah, those are my limited recommendations.
I mean, I was gonna just go, because I mean, there's a lot that you can, and I'm sure we'll all name like Thrawn. That's the Thrawn trilogy. Like that's just gonna Heirs to the Empire, all that. But my personal favorite was the Legends series, Young Jedi Knights and Junior Jedi Knights, that followed the Solo Organa children. And I I think that it had that self-insert feel because you're just like, oh, it's these kids and they get to go on cool adventures where they would definitely die. Like they almost did die in a lot of them. And you're like, yeah, they probably shouldn't have been on those adventures, but regardless. And there was just something so fun. It captured a lot of the fun of Star Wars and being like, yeah, I get to learn how to be a Jedi. Yeah, I get to hang out with Luke Skywalker and his ice cold blue eyes. They always were describing his eyes as ice cold blue. It was like every time. And so I really enjoyed those, and I think it led me to keep on kind of stay interested in like the legends and all that stuff because I was like, oh, I love these characters. For canon, I would definitely I like the Darth Vader Kieran Gillen series as well as the follow-up with Dr. Aphra. And he also did a Star Wars run too, which was good. And Claudia Gray's had a lot of good Star Wars stuff come out. I liked Lost Stars a lot. It was nice because it wasn't necessarily here's your favorites. It was these new characters, and it was a cheesy teen YA love story, but I liked it. And Bloodline, her Leia stuff has been really good as well. So those are my thoughts.
Well, I figured Nick was definitely going to go for Heir of the Empire because I kind of want to say that too. But I'm going to go with the Dark Horse book Star Wars Tales. It is like a vignette, non-canonical series of just random Star Wars tales that stars a variety of different characters, and they're a lot of fun because they run the gamut of, you know, like this is serious or this is we're just playing in this space. There's even a story where Han Solo is put on trial in the Emperor's court for the whole Greedo shooting thing, or I think one of my favorites is the red droid with the bad motivator, whose name I totally forget. It was actually a Jedi who was sacrificing himself for itself for the greater good of the galaxy because it knew R2 had to get to his destination. And also, Professor Scott reminded me that from a certain point of view, I am about halfway through Empire, and it's great. And it reminded me how much I loved, and I can't remember the story's name or who wrote it, but from the first book, From A New Hope, there is a story in there about a rebellion soldier who is basically trying to make peace as to why he's in the rebellion. And at the very end of the story, spoilers, you learn that he has moved his daughter to Alderaan because he assumes it's safe. And like, oh, that gut punched me. So I would highly recommend that series as well because it's so good.
I have quite a few books that I really like. Of course, I'll always say any of the Thrawn books from the Legacy series, but I particularly liked Outbound Flight, where we kind of, although it was a later book, it's supposed to be one of the first instances where we meet Grand Admiral Thrawn, and so that was one of my favorites. Another Timothy Zahn one that I really enjoy was Scoundrels, which came out just about right before Disney purchased Lucasfilm. And then of the new canon, I just recently read A New Dawn with the story of Kanan Jarrus and how he meets Hera Syndulla. I thought I enjoyed that one quite a bit. I wish they'd do more fan fiction for Rebels characters.
Fans are doing that. You could just go read that stuff.
There's a good amount. I mean, I've been on that tag in like different fan fiction archives. It is a lot of Clone Wars stuff, but there's sometimes just pure Rebels content, so it's nice.
I really remember younger. One Christmas I got Tales of the Bounty Hunter that I really wanted. There was a point where I was really into all the bounty hunters from that, and I remember I had asked for that, and I got 2 Star Wars books that year. And my parents always gave us like an article of clothing to wear to church Christmas Eve and some book or a toy Christmas Eve to play with Christmas morning. And I really wanted that Tales of the Bounty Hunter, and I got the other book on Christmas Eve, and I remember being so upset about it. And then getting it on Christmas Day and then just reading it all day. So that would probably be the book that I have the most memories about.
Very nice. So, what is the best Star Wars video game? I'm trying to cover all my bases here of everything: movies, books.
I've enjoyed many of the games over the years, but I think I enjoy the Knights of the Old Republic games the most, mostly because just the role playing, the overall story arcs, you get so into it, and I remember having such a hard time with some of those games when they first came out, but I think they're the ones that I enjoyed the most, and seconded by the Jedi Outcast.
I'm going to shout out a fellow scholar by the name of Drew Morton, who has both written a great chapter, but also just recently did a video essay that should be published on the website In Transition that sort of talks about how the Death Star trench run is sort of remediated across video games across time, and talks about the sort of different ways in which it kind of puts you in that place. So my answer is like a real hipster, like nerd answer, which is I'm going to pick the original arcade game. And I'm lucky enough to live in Austin, Texas, where we have like a legit arcade that still has this game. You could go play it. But what I love about it is because the graphics, at the time were so limited, but they also replicate perfectly the kind of targeting graphics of those original movies. It's like a perfect case where like the technological limitations of the time perfectly match up with the sort of aesthetic choices of the movie. And so it is really fun to like really, think about pulling down the targeting computer and like getting in there. So I still like playing that game. I play it every time I go up to this arcade in town.
I used to work with a friend, still a friend, but he once spent a fortune on, I think it was something called the Vector Prime, which was like this little weird headset back in the early aughts that had that game on there. And that was such a huge deal at that moment. That's a tough. I think the one game that I spent the most time on was the original Star Wars Battlefront 2 that came out with the original Xbox, when you could, when they allowed you to play the heroes. I and my friends probably spent hours and hours and hours. Just they had like a campaign mode, which kind of acted like a board game, and we would play that all day.
So I didn't really have a game system growing up, and the computer games I got were like, not Star Wars games. So I did get Jedi Knights, Academy, and Outcast recently on the Switch, and so far it's the game controls aren't that great, but I've been playing Galaxy of Heroes on my phone. I like that because it's just turn-based RPG, and you can have a lot of fun different teams. Like if you're like, oh, I want Darth Vader and Wicket to team up and fight people, like that's great. Like I think that's what really the Star Wars universe is about. Also, shout out to a game I've never played, but I love all the content I see from it. The Star Wars Connect game with all the dancing, the Han Solo song. I love that song. It's a bop, and I know it's a real song before it's a Han Solo song, but it's still great. If you haven't seen it, just type in Connect Star Wars Han Solo onto YouTube. It'll change your life.
Well, I would probably say the Old Republic would be my favorite, followed closely by Dark Forces. I really, as I said earlier, enjoyed playing that game and played the heck out of it. So this would be my.
Oh, I will say one more thing. When I first got to use a VR headset, part of the early kind of like, here we're selling you this fun new device, or this, like the most recent iteration of a fun new device, was that you could sort of play this little mini, it wasn't even really a game. It was just kind of like a very thin narrative about like refueling a ship and like defending, the ship from some stormtroopers with a lightsaber. But the kind of like actual like haptic, like immersive, like fully immersed kind of vision of that, like I came out of that crying, and it was a dumb little 5-minute mini game, but it was the first time I had really felt like I was wielding a lightsaber in any kind of meaningful way, and that was another great game moment that I recall.
Yeah, I think Disney needs to move on some of the VR stuff, or even Apple or somebody gets the gadget out. I think that would go big with Star Wars.
There's some kind of Darth Vader narrative on the Oculus Oculus system right now. I haven't played it, but I heard things about it.
So I was giving a talk at Facebook campus, and part of the fun thing of doing that was I got to go play around with the Oculus for a while. And it was the one game that wouldn't load. And I was like trying to like be cool about it and not be like actively, visibly annoyed. But they were like, oh, you can do this rock climbing thing from National Geographic. And I'm like, okay, I guess. But like all I really wanted to do was play that game. So I was very sad I didn't get to try it. It looked cool though.
I remember the old pod race arcade game that came out, around episode 1. That was really popular.
That was cool. And it was like an actual, like the pot, like the seat,
Yeah.
like there's something about those games like from the 90s. Like there's a Jurassic Park game too that's like super cool. It looks like the Jeep and stuff. Like they don't have those anymore.
I've seen that Jurassic Park one recently.
The earliest Star Wars game that I had was the Atari's Empire Strikes Back, and that was you were just in a snowspeeder and fighting endless waves of AT-ATs or AT-ATs, and that's all it was.
Yeah, like the 8-bit graphics on that one are very charming when you go back and look at them. Like the little speeders, little 8-bit speeders, little 8-bit AT-ATs are so cute.
I think my first game though was the Yoda stories. I don't know if anybody ever I played the heck out of that too. I don't really remember anything about it other than you were Luke running around doing stuff for Yoda.
Oh, I forgot about the big MVP, Lego Star Wars. That's really, it's a fun little game. It's not very serious, but sometimes that's just Star Wars.
This is not a game, but I also had a Yoda Tamagotchi, like when Tamagotchis were a thing. And I remember it was just like endlessly feeding Yoda and doing Jedi training, like and lifting rocks over and over and over again. And I eventually let Yoda die. And I think I've never quite fully recovered emotionally from that decision in my life. Cause I was just like, oh, leave me alone. I was in full like Luke Skywalker, like, leave me alone. Stop touching that. Like, like it was very, I was like, but I felt badly about it after the fact.
The Tamagotchi
I had the
disappear into
R2D2
thin
one.
air.
All right, this next question is a little random, but in Return of the Jedi, where do you think the Ewoks got or found Princess Leia's dress?
Okay, I maybe have an answer for that because we just watched my friend and I, based off my memory of watching Caravan of Courage, we watched the 2 Ewoks movies, and I made the mistake of looking up Wicket's Wikipedia entry, Legends, not canon, and oh my god, it was the longest article. Like, I was like scrolling for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, I'm not even at the Caravan of Courage yet. We're still on Wicket, like, having his old adventures in the Ewok show. So I know it's kind of like, well, did they know humans? I feel like they probably had met a human, so they did try to eat Han and Luke, but maybe they just only met females before then, and they were just like, oh, or they ate the person wearing the dress. Or they're just that clever, because I think what was it, in the Caravan of Courage movies, like, Wicket basically was like, oh, I'm going to just start speaking English now, in parts of it, and you're like, okay, cool. Yes, so I think they just kind of, they learn, they adapt, maybe they did eat some people, but then they learned, don't eat them. So, also it could have just been like the vibes of Han Solo. They could have just been like, yeah, so. But I think that there was probably contact, because in the Caravan of Courage movie, it's a family, they like have to ship into place, and then they're like, you need to get off the planet, and it's set post Return of the Jedi, but there's nothing in it that really is like explicitly this is post Return of the Jedi. Also, there were probably stormtroopers walking around.
Aside from the fashions being like very jazzercise 80s, like very jazzercise 80s. My favorite mask that I have bought in this past year is a Sindel and Wicket mask that like literally no one gets, but it makes me happy. From Caravan of Courage. I've completely forgotten what the question is. What is the question? Oh, I like this cannibal theory. I'm gonna jump on board with that, where like they just happen to be eating people, but they also understand that it would be wasteful to just toss the clothes. So,
And Leia
You
was
know,
nice.
we know they're industrious and they reappropriate things constantly to make like traps and stuff. So like that all tracks for me. I'm gonna go with that.
See, I always thought Ewoks were vegetarians, and I don't know why I've had that in my head, but for some reason, I thought
Yeah,
they were.
they're pretty much roasting Han on the spit.
Oh, okay. I don't know where they got that from.
But if you met Han Solo for the first time and he was like that, wouldn't you be? I mean, maybe that's how Harrison Ford wanted to go in the series. Just be like, just roast me on the Ewok pit.
Can you
George said no.
imagine like Jedi, the movie aimed at children, and they're just like, we're not only going to kill off one of these main characters, we're just going to burn them alive and then watch a bunch of teddy bears eat them. And then like, just like, yeah, they would have sold fewer toys. Let's put it that way.
I feel like that thought went through Rian Johnson's mind because the Chewbacca eating a porg scene in Last Jedi with the porgs just staring at him, I'm like, this is just cold, man.
That's the picture of vegetarianism, I think, if anything, in the entire canon.
So, anyone else have an answer or thought?
I like I like that they were gonna eat. I like that they had eaten other people theory, whatever. That's the one that I think is the most fun. Because I bet they had a field day with all those dead stormtroopers left over at the end of Return of the Jedi. That big feast at the end. I'm sure you know what they were eating now.
This has gone to a dark place.
And I'm just gonna say, in the Ewok series, they did have some bad guys who I believe were people, and I mean the Empire was kind of chilling. So
Yeah.
like they did see people. If they ate any of them, we don't know, but they've met people before they. I think it was just again the vibes they were getting.
Yeah. I'll
Han.
throw out an alternative that's just like clearly, you know, like I would say that dress is not like the most complicated garment to throw together. So maybe they just, I don't know, maybe there's some local like handcrafts person who like, you know, in the village, some elder who's just like, yeah, we'll toss this simple A-line together for you, you know, so you don't have to worry. I don't know.
Or Leia just carries a dress around with her.
Maybe.
That's my thought when I was a kid. It was just like, oh, she must have packed it.
She was wearing a poncho, so it could have been under there.
A lot of them changed at some point, you know. Han Solo, he changed back into his normal outfit from his jacket, but then I guess he always had it on underneath it. So
All right. So, last question to wrap it up. So, Star Wars has been around for over 40 years. So, why do you think it still continues to resonate with every generation?
People sharing it with their kids. I think also just Star Wars has a very simple, big narrative, good versus evil. I know there's a lot of complexities and other stuff, but the general gist of the movies is, you know, good versus evil. It's that hero's journey thing. And I think, like we've talked about, there's so much to the world that, like, you're like, oh, these characters are kind of cool. And I don't know. I think it's just we were also just, it was something, I guess, I mean, I wasn't alive then, but I'm guessing it was just something so different. And then people kept on passing it down. Like, I watched the Star Wars movies because my dad was a Star Wars fan. He showed them to us. And I think it's just this idea that just, and I mean, I will say probably merchandising has a good part of stuff to do with it too, because Star Wars is the king of merchandising. And sorry, this became a little rambly and less inspiring when it got to merchandising, but I think it's
Well, the real money of the movie's made.
yeah, I mean, George Lucas made a very good deal when he's like, yeah, you can have the movie price up. I want the merchandising rights. And boy, howdy, that worked out for him really well. But yeah, I think there's just something about it, and everybody just has so many feelings about these characters, and they've taken on lives of their own. Like it's just there's some kind of like really the only, I guess, like thinking of like the Marvel movies nowadays maybe kind of are like a bit of a similar, like where you're following these characters, these stories, but Star Wars just has this history and it's so beloved. And even though stuff comes out that's not like great, you're still gonna be like, this is so good and this is so cool. And there's just something about it. I don't know.
For my money, it's accessibility. It's not just science fiction. It's not just the hero's journey. It can be pretty much anything to anyone. You want to do a Western? Great, we can do a Western. You want to do a horror story? Great, here's a horror story. It's one of the most adaptable properties, and all the characters that live in it feel lived in it. And it's just a fantastic, accessible thing.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you both just said. And I think that, we toss around this word, like this word world building a lot, right? As though that's an easy thing to do. And I think that Star Wars sort of remains to me the most kind of essential text to look to when we're talking about world building done right. Because it is all about those like essential mythic big picture kind of themes and stories and narrative arcs. But at the same time, it is like such a richness of detail that you just know in your gut that the story is so much bigger than any one Jedi's journey to, or it's so much bigger than that. And so I think that, again, like so much of my own love for it focuses on, like, I feel like I'm always looking at these moments like the cantina, and I'm those are the moments that really always stick with me, because I was like, that's just like a very quick establishing shot, reverse shot. We get Luke kind of looking around the cantina, and cinematically it's like not that interesting in the way that it's shot, but like just the sheer fact that like this is almost like a throwaway, right? It's not like an important moment even in the movie necessarily from like a storytelling perspective, but it does show you just how big the world is. And to me, that's what's exciting about it, is that it is always encouraging you to think about the other stories that could be told in this space. Even if the franchise and Disney doesn't want to always tell those stories, much to our frustration, that they're there. And I think that there's something very like visceral and powerful about just knowing that. And the fact that, the fact that it can speak to so many generations, I think, as you both touched on, is a really important thing too.
Yeah, I would agree with what everyone has said. I think part of the what resonates with everyone is just there's a character for everyone in this universe. I mean, everyone has characters that they love and they identify with, and they want to see more. And some we don't, others we do. Some for worse or for better, but it just makes for a really well-rounded thing for everyone to enjoy.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't know if there's much left for me to say. As everybody said something, I'm like, oh yeah. I was gonna say that there's something for everybody, that if you look, you can find someone you can relate to in the universe somewhere. And I know for me, also growing up, it ended up being something that was a world of excitement of anything was possible. Before I found Star Wars, my brother was into Star Trek, and I knew that more so than Star Wars. But that was like this rigid world of, militaristic to some degree, and then Star Wars comes along, and it is just adventure all the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that like we can all relate to Luke just kind of being stuck doing chores, right? And just like looking out on the horizon and being like, ugh, get me out of here. You know what I mean? Like there has to be more than this. Like, no offense, Aunt Beru, but like there's got to be more than this. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a very innately human feeling often. And I think it's a reason why we keep coming back to these stories.
Also, I think Grogu has proved you can like just get anyone into Star Wars. They're just like, that's the Baby Yoda. Like I've had people like I have a read this It Is the Way with Baby Yoda on it, Grogu. I was just filling gifts one day and a lady was like, "You're sure?" Oh, and I'm like, yeah, we can all agree it's pretty cute. So I think
Baby
it's like that. And like
yeah, Baby Yoda truly does unite everyone. Like every Star Wars fan can unite around Baby Yoda.
I think the fact that like they just saw like Yoda, they're like, let's make a baby of it and let's let it be the plot of the Mandalorian. I'm like, well, that just shows how brilliant Star Wars can be. Sometimes you just take but what if? They won't name Yoda species, but they'll give babies. Sure.
I do like that my son has gotten to the point where he's 8, and he doesn't like Star Wars as much as I do. His favorite character, I think, is Darth Vader. but he will openly tell anybody here say Baby Yoda. He'll be like, "That's not the name. It's the child of Grogu."
Listen, I'll tell you what, when everybody remembers Yaddle's name, I will remember Grogu. How about that? Like,
Justice for Yaddle.
Justice for Yaddle, indeed.
She's such an interesting backstory too. And then it's just like, she's also, it's Yoda with a bun on his head. I want to know what Yoda's species name is. I just really want to know.
The fact that we've devolved into this debate, I think, is probably the best answer you're going to get to your question. Right?
Yes.
Like the fact that we all still have such fun, like picking this apart is part of it too, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yep. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed yourself on the panel. We are going to have this up on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and watch or send it to someone, it's going to be up there. So thank you, Adam, for joining us. And thank you, Professor Scott. This has been so much fun.
Thanks. This is great.
Happy Star Wars Day, everybody.
May the
Happy
Force
Star
be
Wars
with
Day.
you.
And also with you.